Welcome. My name is Mark Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. Today, I'm going to do an overall review of you've been indicted, you're facing, or you have the fear of facing a federal indictment, you have questions, and I'm going to try and provide some of the answers to you this evening. By quoting here, I quote three separate federal judges because each one has um, a different, what's important to them. Federal Judge Patrick Schultz. It's surprising how many otherwise competent attorneys punt at the sentencing hearing. What's meant by that is that at sentencing, it's pretty much likely that your judge that you're going to be in front of is going to want to talk to you. And maybe based on the fact that you had a great autobiographical narrative that he read or she read, but they're going to want to know if you have anything to say. And a lot of times, when the judges turn at sentencing to the defendant, they don't expect the question. And to be candid with you, that happened to me because I too was convicted of a felony in 2006. My medical license was reinstated shortly thereafter, but I wasn't prepared for when the judge started to talk to me. And so that already lets the judge know that the attorney really hasn't done good by you to prepare you. In all fairness to my own counsel, I was not a great client. Second is from Judge Robert Scalia. Don't wait to think about sentencing advocacy, since 99% of federal clients will be facing sentencing. You want to start preparing for the case early on. So I have several experiences with clients like this, with individuals, where it's okay to go to trial, but it would also be similarly good if your attorney knew more about your background. And this is what I'll go into in a while, but it's your autobiographical background, your story, your narrative. But by giving and sharing with your attorney that information, that may help them, even a small nugget, as you go to trial. I'll also say that what you do not want to do is anger the court. That is something that you don't want to do because at sentencing, as this says, most people are not going to win, are not going to be acquitted at sentencing. And so at trial rather. And so you may find yourself back in front of that same judge for leniency. And there's federal judge Mark Bennett, and he is quoted on my website, but is saying that if you can put together your narrative, your autobiographical background of who you are, and have it attached to or embedded or part of your pre-sentence interview that turns into your pre-sentence report, that's gold. And that is from federal judge Mark Bennett. Here on this page, this is the purpose of having this YouTube here from Admiral McRaven, who led the attack on bin Laden. But more than that, is that it's a small video that he gives to his SEALs where they should never give up and continue always moving forward. And you can't do this alone, and you need help. And so we're facing sentencing. His SEALs are facing bullets. So there's a very big difference. The next the next one I'm going to, I didn't have that ready, is physician-assisted preparation. This is important because you want to make sure if, in fact, you have a medical record, this is where this takes on significance because you're going to have copies of all of your medical records. And this takes time for hospitals, doctors, surgical centers, for them to just get all those records together. And it can be everything from just general office notes, if you have prescriptions, if you have surgeries, if you have diagnostic tests done, you need copies of everything. And if there's things like PET scans, CT scans, MRIs, and they're pretty significant as to surgery or your medical health and treatment, you may want to also get copies of these on CDs. And then this all can go into your pre-sentence interview. And the probation officer who writes your pre-sentence report is going to learn about you by interviewing you, by all the material and information you provide. And so now, if you have a medical record, it's turning this pre-sentence report almost into a medical referral for you as you go to prison. And in prison, only the most basic care is provided. And that's not even all the time. But your autobiographical narrative together with this pre-sentence report, you're ready to what's called have an allocution or just talk to your judge. Because if you can persuade the judge that you've really, had a moment where you realize you did wrong, and however, I don't know the status of your case, but it could be that the judge could lower your sentence. Understand also that nobody can promise you what any judge or prosecutor or the Federal Bureau of Prisons is going to do on any given day. I had discussions today with an attorney this morning where he said that his client, he's pretty sure, is not going to be sentenced, that they're cooperating. I have to say that that cooperation doesn't always turn out the way you think it may. You know, the judge could have get out of bed that morning on the wrong side of the bed. I mean, anything can happen. And so you always want to be prepared. You hope for the best. You plan and prepare for the worst, if you will. This event you're going through is overwhelming. Lawyers, decisions, waiting. If you have to review discovery information for your attorneys to decide to go to trial or not. This can be a very surreal moment, and it can mess with your head. And so, with over 30 years in medicine and surgery, personally, I'm here to support you and just help you work through some of this decision making. Admiral McCraven, I already reviewed a little bit with you. It's a 13-minute video that shows that we're not facing bullets, we're facing prison. Preparation beyond the legal. Judges want to know, and we've gone through that they just want to know, they want to hear from you. Judges understand that the Department of Justice wants a conviction, the prosecutor wants jail time, and the attorney that you're paying is paid to say nice things about you. Therefore, the only person they know nothing about is you. Some of the nuances of your personal background are not part of a traditional defense. And a large part of this is because law schools don't cover, in their curriculum, the realities of life in prison, including the daily routines of what you have to do, the do's and don'ts that affect your well-being, how to, if in fact you get into trouble or in prison, you can't get a lawyer, but they have their version of the law, which is called the administrative remedy process. And so all of this is very important. I've already reviewed, judges are aware that crimes don't happen in a vacuum. So the purpose of your biographical narrative is to humanize yourself. Before you get to your pre-sentence interview, you want to have copies of everything that has been required of you and be able to have it spell checked, organized, and provided to the probation officer about a week before your interview. And it's important because if you do that, these individuals are overworked, underpaid. They're seeing a lot of different defendants every day. And so how can you stand out to them? Because judges depend on the probation officer who is going to draft your pre-sentence report. The probation officer is also, the judge depends on them for your sentencing record, for their sentencing recommendation and your placement. And so this pre-sentence interview with the probation officer is probably one of the most important meetings of your life. And so it's something that you want to be prepared for. You want to attach copies of all of these documents. Your narrative or your autobiographical narrative is your history of how you got to this point in your life. And it covers, in addition to all of those different points in your life, the acceptance of responsibility and understanding that you've harmed victims. A release plan. A release plan is good because, first off, it'll let the probation officer and the judge both know that this is for you temporary and you're already planning for what you're going to do once you are released. Maybe you'll have a support letter from someone who's willing to hire you. There's no guarantee that the job will be available, but these character letters that would include a job offer is important because judges don't want to see you back in their courtroom, and they're going to tell you that. You're going to have copies of your social security card, your birth certificate, passport. I can make this bigger. Okay. Passport, driver's license, or some sort of ID card. Character letters, I just touched on it for a bit. These are letters that attest to your character. And they're people who have known you for a long time. I have a small template tutorial on, what goes into a character letter. But if someone is willing to hire you, that they've known you for a long time, they trust you, they're willing to, you'll be at one location, you'll be making, high minimal salary, you'll be paid every other week and coordinate as per the rest of their staff. This is a very good letter to have. There's no guarantee, no one has a crystal ball as to the future, but the fact of having that letter is a big deal. If you have medical records, prescriptions, these all have to be in your pre-sentence report. And you need copies of all of your medical records, again, provided to the probation officer that week before your interview. And so all medical records, hospital, surgical, pathology, blood and lab reports, copies of x-rays, MRI, CT, ultrasound, PET scans, EKG, EKG, EG, and EEG. I'm getting tongue-tied. And all of these different diagnostic tests should also be on CDs, prescriptions, medications, and medical devices. The Bureau of Prisons has a generic formulary. There is a generic formulary, there's a generic non-formulary. You need to check and make sure your medications are going to be available. And what do you do if they're not? Getting into a little more detail, if you have a divorce decree, school diplomas, you can be a rocket scientist, but if you don't bring or at least provide to that probation officer at the interview some sort of document that says you went to high school, you went to college, you graduated, you need that copy of those diplomas. A marriage certificate. Administrative remedy process is pretty serious. It's how you defend yourself once you're in prison through their system. Birth certificates, draft card, you can go in with cash, $320, $370 November and December. You can also have MoneyGram, Western Union sent into you. There are something called the Financial Responsibility Program, which I'll go into a little while later. Detainers. If you have car registration papers, and if the car is in your significant other's name or someone else's name, they can provide a letter stating notarized that they give you permission to use their car and you'll have insurance. Character letters we touched on. Detainers. You need to resolve any detainers which are unresolved charges anywhere else in the country. And these need to be you need to resolve these early, because they will, if you have an existing detainer, once you're sentenced, the Bureau of Prisons is going to put you into a higher security classification. And you don't want that. Employment verification, pay stubs. Mostly they may want, your probation officer will let your attorney know they may want a year's worth, 5 months worth. Income tax reports for the last 3 years. Immigration papers or passport. Legal papers, you can take all of your medical records and you can take some of your legal records that are not your pre-sentence report and put them in envelopes labeled legal mail. Those are personal names, including phone numbers and addresses of people you want to stay in contact with. And they can be on the back of one of the pages from your court case where they're going to have all of their information, email, phone numbers, regular address for all those people. And you can put it right there in that envelope titled legal mail. Military disability information, if that applies. Naturalization papers. Prescriptions for medications. I say here 3 to 4 weeks, probably 2 weeks of medication. At worst, they're going to be thrown out. At best, they may be available for your use. If you're surrendering on a weekend or a holiday, the Bureau of Prisons may allow your pharmacy in the prison to let them make them available for you. If when you're surrendering with those medications, the prescriptions that are also in the pre-sentence report, just if the officer wants to take them, if you can just request that those prescriptions be given to the pharmacy or medical. Power of attorney, living will. You need to have both of those done. If you're going to a satellite camp, you always need to present to the higher security facility. You don't want to, they won't let you into the satellite camp. And then you're expected to be placed into some sort of isolation cell by yourself or someone else. And so you want to have a list of reading material, books about different interests you may have, to set up for 2 a month to be sent to you, with the first set of 2 being sent, let's say, a day or 2 before you arrive, so they can come to you if you're sitting in this isolation unit for a period of time. Because being put in isolation, if you're claustrophobic, is not an easy thing. Solitary confinement. Proof of residence, rent receipts, property, mortgage papers, professional copies. I've been through this. Social security card, driver's license, certificates, other licenses. If you are eligible for RDAP, this is the drug program, you want to make sure that the judge notes your eligibility for RDAP in their order, in their judgment and commitment order. So you and your attorney should try and do that. You want to review this whole formula for completeness. If you have a specific psychology problem or you have a mental health condition which requires you to get into a certain program, these are security level dependent, and there are not a lot. There's, for some, like autism, there's maybe 2 locations nationwide. And so I have all of the prisons in my computer. I have all the drugs that are available in my computer, and I have them delineated out as to the different programs for mental health issues. All of this you should have before your pre-sentence interview, because if in fact you need a special program, then you want to mention that has to be part of the information that gets transmitted to the probation officer before you get to your interview. I talked about a list of books you like to read, send two at a time, with the first two coming to you 2 days before your arrival. You want to spread this list out based on a number of months that you plan on being in prison, and then split it among friends and relatives. Understanding the financial responsibility program. If you have a court-ordered financial penalty, you're going to have to participate. If you think you're going to be taking in $300 to $500 a month, when you first meet your case manager in prison, they're going to bring this up, offer $25 a quarter. Your judge may have on the order that you're paying $25 a quarter. If you're going to be taking in thousands of dollars a month, you may want to offer $200 a month to go into to participate in this financial responsibility program. If you have no financial penalty, then you have nothing to worry about. But if you have a financial penalty, the Department of Justice would like nothing more than at some point unannounced swoop in and take 75% of everything in your bank. So that if you do not have a financial penalty, you can have money sent in and you can have it actually automatically sent to the Bureau of Prison lockbox. You don't have to worry about sending it all the time through Western Union or MoneyGram. Vaccines. If you've had vaccines, bring proof or the card. Personally, you're going into a closed environment. This is just me speaking as a physician. I would get all the vaccines that you can, flu, whatnot. COVID is now, we're in October of 2025. COVID's not bad, but it definitely is out there. Measles is a problem. If it ever makes it into a prison system, it's not going to be pretty. You can bring a wedding band, religious necklace, or Bible, anything under $100, and nothing with any stones in it. And lastly, when you're driving to surrender, sometimes the prisons are in really remote areas, and so if you're going 3 miles over the limit, that could give you a ticket. I alluded to access to basic health care, and it's by basic I mean it is very basic. It's going to depend on your medical record being included in your pre-sentence interview. It's not guaranteed, but if you have medical needs and it's in your medical record and it's in your pre-sentence report, you now have, if they are not reading the report and paying attention to those medical need prescriptions that you may have to have, compassionate release, well, you'll have to go through the administrative remedy process or part of it, and then jump to compassionate release. And I'm going to explain it, later in this, a little bit later. How can a prison consultant help? Well, most attorneys haven't been to prison, and that's not part of any law school curriculum. And so this can be a surreal experience. Some people may think they're going to encounter something like Shawshank Redemption. It's going to be an arduous journey that's going to be full of disappointment, but you don't want to be surprised. You want to have, you don't want to know what you're going to expect. As a physician, I'm innately aware of what you're going through. As I said, I've been through it a long time ago. And if in fact you have medical or mental health issues, this is important that we would dive into as part of your autobiographical narrative. And the big caveat is like having surgery. There's no guarantees. Again, I had this conversation with an attorney this morning, and he said his client is guaranteed they're not going to serve time. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to tell them that, it's not guaranteed. They hope that happens. But if they're not prepared for that pre-sentence interview and sentencing, then that individual could be in for a lot of unpleasant surprises. Judges understand. While the Bureau of Prisons is out there telling everyone that they can provide all types of medical care, there are judges that understand that this is not the case. And so I'm showing you two examples here. First example, this is Bureau of Prisons held this gentleman in contempt for wasting away from untreated cancer. And this is crazy. And so I'm going to try and open this up right here. And it comes, the gentleman's name had cancer, terminal cancer, and at this time it was discussed that Judge Dalton and the BOP had to free this individual. But the Bureau of Prisons still didn't do it. And eventually, after the judge got involved, the Bureau of Prisons had defied the judge's order. Instead, they finally released him. But what did they do? Although he had to be pushed out of prison in a wheelchair, the Federal Bureau of Prison van dropped this gentleman off at a curb outside Dallas-Fort Worth Airport without a wheelchair and just left him there. He was weak, bleeding, and just soiling on himself. And eventually, it goes on to say that it was only due to Good Samaritans that helped him get to the gate and then get on the plane and fly back home. Here's another one. An emergency motion for immediate release. when a sentenced defendant is grappling with normal high blood pressure and it's denied, there are common generics, and this individual can be given. But what happened here is that he was on a hydrochlorothiazide, which is a diuretic or water pill, very cheap. It's used everywhere today. He was on a certain dosage. And when he went into the prison, the nurse on duty reduced the dosage. He had problems with that reduced dosage. And then they changed the medication to a, not a diuretic, but to lisinopril, which kind of squeezes the pancreas, if you will. It squeezes rather the blood vessels. And so he wound up getting transient ischemic attacks, and he wound up in hospital emergency rooms. And so here we'll open this, and a judge blasted the prison for providing poor medical care, and he had to let this gentleman out of prison early. I mean, that the judge didn't want to do that, but what he said was that sending someone to prison for no matter for how long should not have to be a death sentence. Continuing, we're going to move over to here. So I'm jumping around a bit. So you're facing your indictment. Don't be defined by your, don't let it define who you are. Putting together an autobiographical narrative, a story, a backstory on who you are is no difference rather than BMW commercials on their cars, Nike on their sneakers. It's going to act as your brand. And right now, the Department of Justice has released your brand of who you are to the world in the form of this indictment. And it probably doesn't make you feel good. And so what we will do is do our best to make amends to my victims. You have to let the judge know you're not going to be back in the courtroom, you accept responsibility, and you understand they're a victim. So what's the process that we go through? Preparing for the pre-sentence interview, some attorneys are familiar with this process in detail, some are not. There are stakeholders, which is everyone that's involved with your future. So it's going to be, briefly, your attorney, the prosecutor, the probation officer, the judge. Then it's going to be, when you get into prison, it's going to be case managers, the warden. And then when you leave prison, it's going to be another probation officer on supervised release. Your autobiographical narrative and release plan, FRP is Financial Responsibility Program, if you have a financial penalty from the courts. And so you want to be able to have all of this information included into your pre-sentence interview, your medical history evaluation, and any and all other paperwork. And so this biographical narrative, literally, it's your life story. And if you do that with me, at least, we have all the information that's required for the probation officer's pre-sentence interview already written up for them. And it humanizes you to this person, because the probation officer, they make your sentencing and placement recommendation to the judge, and the judge depends on them. Preparing for the sentencing hearing, the allocution, the amount of time you've spent on your autobiographical narrative, by this point, you pretty much own it. And so your allocution is just your conversation with the judge from the heart, being respectful and understanding, again, that you accept responsibility, and there are victims. And then it's more, summarizing what is in your autobiographical narrative that could help you. You want to make a placement request, you should know that ahead of time. And then there's three parts to the request, but you only want to request one prison facility, not somewhere near where you live. You need to provide the name of the prison. And so this is very important and usually gets missed. Personalized BOP, Bureau of Prison Placement Packet. I have, again, all the programs in my computer, and we have court-ready placement packets for your attorney and for the court. You're surrendering prison day one. It would be good to have some information and know what expectations and disappointments that you're going to face. And there's going to be do's and don'ts, like do not use anyone's cell phone, because if in fact that phone gets found, and it will be found eventually, and if you have a number on it that is related to you and pinned to you by the correction staff at the prison, you can lose all of the credits you've earned towards early release. You may be put in solitary confinement, and you may be shipped to another prison. And so you just don't want to have that problem. Case managers, unit team, these individuals are in charge of you while you're in prison. And the case manager is who you will be discussing their release plan with, and what goes into it, and keeping them updated. First step back, these are different programs that the Bureau of Prisons is going to offer you. But if you are a rocket scientist or a bright guy or you woman or you own the business or and you're going to be in prison for a little while, consider teaching a class. Write up a syllabus, outline it, let the case manager look it over. It's possible. Sean Diddy Combs taught a class when he was in MDC Brooklyn and got the Bureau of Prison okay. And so if you go ahead and outline this for your case manager, let them have the credit. All you want them to look good. And if they get what they want and look good to their supervisors, that in turn may help you. Your release plan all the time is growing. Your release plan is a written log of everything you do every day. Name, date, time. I call it insurance. Why? Because if you're going to a first step back class, let's say, and you write in your and you have a notebook, logbook, you can get them from Amazon, $5, $6, $7, several hundred pages, and you just note the day, the date, what the class is on, if you learned something, who taught it, and maybe 10 months later, your case manager says, you missed a couple classes. And you can just take your logbook out and show them because everything is written in chronological order. You couldn't just fake it that you were there and this is what they talked about. If you had a meeting or an altercation with the correction staff, this is your insurance. If they told you to do something, as soon as you get in front of your logbook or journal, write it down that you spoke with them and this is what you have to do, and then make sure you do it. And if you're having problems with medical, this is also very important to keep this thing accurate and share it with those that love you at home. And you can do that every time you get to their computer system by sending an email. Administrative remedy process, that's a whole nother YouTube on how to do it. Develop a routine that works for you. We're all used to routines. Get up in the morning, get the kids ready, kids out to school, you go to work. If you don't work, you go to school, whatever it is, you do things, the same similar things every day. This is just something different and it's in prison. You're going to have, you may have a job, do your job. Don't pay someone else to do it. If you're going to take a class, make sure you go to each class. If you're going to do sports, it's fine, do sports. If you're going to prison, don't break a bone or an ankle or an arm or something because quite frankly, the care is not going to be there like you expected to be. You're not going to, just because you think you broke your ankle, you're not getting an X-ray. That's again, another YouTube. And then there's post-release, supervised release, what to do when you get home. There's halfway house or home confinement. Right now, the Federal Bureau of Prisons will open this up. And I thought I could there we go. I want to hide this. And so the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Marshall, this was back in May 2025, he got a directive. And his policy is going to say they're going to go ahead and work it so that everyone can get to home confinement. And they're going to prioritize the following from staff. Home confinement is a priority for individuals who are eligible. And there's another one of these memos where they actually have BOP staff now at Grand Prairie, Texas, working with the residential reentry team. So they're going to make sure that everyone that is due early release to home confinement and they're in a halfway house get moved to home confinement. And they're going to also make sure that the unit team stack First Step Act and Second Chance Act earn time credits so that you can earn the credits to be able to see if you can get that early release to home confinement as opposed to halfway house. But the caveat is going to be in this conversation that this was just started in May 2025. I don't think it's going to be really prison wide for at least a year. And so that is most of what I'm going to do for this particular YouTube. I hope you have found this helpful. You can go to my website, which is pprsus.com. Let's see if I can find it here. pprsus.com. There's my phone number, 240-888-7778. Any questions or concerns, give me a call, and I thank you for listening.